Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Encourage Mindset. I'm your host, Ethan Vandehyve. Today, I have another guest speaker on the show, Brandon Simonis. Great to have you. As a pleasure. Great to be a connection with you. Brandon, what are you currently up to?
Yeah, I appreciate the introduction, Ethan, and appreciate you having me on the show today. I'm actually a recent UW-EC grad. I graduated in May of 2020, and I find myself now in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I work in public accounting, and I specialize in nonprofit and government audits.
Awesome. That sounds great. And it's so great to have some alumni here from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. So on this podcast, we talk about mindset, motivation, confidence, and we talk about and get in depth on some questions. The first question I have for you, Brandon, is what's the habit requiring the least effort that makes the greatest difference?
Yeah, great question. And one of them, and it's something that I've fallen back on, actually started in high school, but the habit that requires the least amount of effort is gratitude, is practicing an attitude of gratitude every day. Doesn't take much time, but it makes the biggest difference. And the reason it's such a big difference is you cannot be mad and grateful at the same time. Like if you ever try it, it's just not possible. You're either mad, frustrated, or you're grateful and thankful. So I've found that out, and I was thankful I had a baseball coach who made us write attitudes of gratitudes in high school. I was like, why is he doing this? But fast forward 6 years, and I'm like thankful that he did, because it's helped really change my mindset during the pandemic. Because I mean, obviously times have changed, things have changed, but I've been grateful for the time, and it just changed my perspective. I mean, I'm grateful for my health, number one, but I'm also grateful for the extra time I got to spend with family for a short period of time while I was transitioning out of college.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people need to understand sometimes being negative on yourself, and then that creates more frustration, and you're just not going to be a great person. But then, like you said, looking back on it and trying to be, okay, this is some stuff that I need to look at myself and look in the mirror at. And then when I can do that, I can eventually correlate myself to be more thankful and appreciative. And then when a bad situation happens, like the pandemic you mentioned, okay, I need to step back, go to that drawing board again, and realize, hey, this is what we don't want to get into, and this is what you need to start doing. So excellent answer. I think it's a very habit that should be input in most people's lives. So that is awesome. And this kind of correlates into our next question then is, what is the best advice on keeping focused on important matters when distractions in our lives are constant?
Yeah, another great question, something I actually struggled with in high school and college, and I've gotten a better control on it now, but it's really come down to like prioritizing your priorities. So life's always going to throw things at you, and it's just like realizing like what are your like goals, or what are the things you're working towards, and are the things that keep coming up in your life going to bring you closer to that goal or that dream that you want to accomplish, or is it going to actually take you away from it? And that's kind of how I've really prioritized my life, is I prioritize in different areas of my life with my faith, my health, my career and finances, and then and family. I can't forget family. That's number one on there, but you always have to prioritize that stuff. And if it doesn't really fall into that bucket and I have something come up, I'm not always going to say yes to it unless I feel it's going to help me in one of those areas. And another thing on that is using your calendar and getting really strict on it. So you prioritize things, but then have it set up in your calendar so that you're not going to cancel on it. In college, I used to do it where I'd just like, I'll get this assignment done when I get to it. And then it's like midnight and I didn't get to it. So then I'm like, well, so there's always tomorrow, right? So it's definitely just putting it in your schedule and blocking that time off to actually accomplish it. And then that allows you to get into some of those other distractions that might come up. So
yes, definitely some good points there. I know when I've created some of my previous podcast episodes, I kind of talked about the same thing, is finding your sort of bucket, but I kind of referenced it as slices of pizza. What 8 slices are your go-to? Like you said, family is your number one. Then you have faith, and you just kind of go down there. Health. What kind of 8 or what your bucket is? What kind of ones are important to you? And you put at that priority level. And then which ones can you find a way to squeeze in that pizza or make it that topping,
Yeah.
the pepperoni sausage, whatever you can kind of do. So great points there. And then this kind of all falls into motivation and your ability to make those into your bucket or your slice of pizza. So, how do you sustain self motivation when you suffer a setback toward your goals?
Yeah, and I think we were all kind of with the pandemic, like just throwing a curveball recently, and this is a perfect example of that. But I think when you have goals, and this is life, life's always going to throw curveballs. It might be the pandemic, it might be an actual like family situation, it might be a health situation. Like, there's one thing that I know is that life eventually is going to throw something at you that you didn't expect. So, how I've been able to stay motivated during those times is remembering why I started. So like remembering why I went to college to begin with, if something happened there, or why I do what I do now. And going back to that has been such a crucial part. And I have a sign back there, and you can probably see it. It says "Have big dreams,
Yeah.
you'll grow into them." And I always go back to that. I actually have a bucket list of things and like a dream board that I want to accomplish, and just looking at it, it motivates me, and it reminds me like, hey, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing on a daily basis. So if something comes up, a lot of times it can just like fall off my shoulder, or like it's not a big impact, because it's like, hey, this happened, like let's figure a solution out, let's focus on the solution, and let's go on and let's create some more success in something, and let's find that solution so that we can accomplish it. So that's kind of my self motivation. And then tying it back to the beginning, I lean into gratitude. I don't know how familiar you are with The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, but he talks a lot about his rock, and his rock is the gym, like his backbone that he falls back on. And one of the things that I've really fallen back on is gratitude, and just being thankful for where I'm at currently and what I have in my life. Because that's motivating enough just to see like the progress, and it humbles you. And life has a funny way of humbling you when you're in that point, but you have to be able to be grateful for it. And that's really helped me stay motivated, because like, hey, I have a great support system in my life. I have people who really care about me, and even though I'm going through a tough time, like, hey, I can reach out to these people. I'm still in pretty good health, if it's not a health situation, but I'm still in good health, or I have the finances to solve that problem.
Exactly. And I would say it's really important to make sure that you are taking care of your support system. You are going to reach out to your grandmother, your mom, call them once a day, just so it helps you, but it also helps them. And one of the ways that I found motivation is through doing those reach outs and stuff like that. But you also talked about having a dream board or the calendar, just ways to kind of look at it and be like, wow, this is what I got to do today. This is how once I accomplish that stuff, I will feel better about myself. This will make me feel like I did something today, and that will keep my motivation continuing on and on. And I think when I look at myself, for example, I usually don't write stuff down. I've been trying to work more on that, but now that I've been starting to do that, I have a whiteboard, write all my stuff on there. I got a calendar behind me on the wall that I started writing into. And then my mom gave me a planner. It's like, here you go, use this too. So it's like 3 ways that, okay, I'm on the ball today. This is what I got to keep doing. So that is awesome. And then this kind of all goes into how or what other ways you can kind of get your motivation and confidence or direction. So, what book or podcast would you recommend helping someone find their motivation or improve their mindset?
This is a powerful question, because there's so many books out there. As you can see on the back, I have a whole shelf back there of books. But one that really helped me with the mindset, and I feel like our theme to that today in this conversation has really been about like the why you do something, and dreams in that. And a book I read by Sinek was Start with Why. And the reason that book is so important is a lot of people, and granted in society, we're taught this, to think about the how and the what of something.
Mhm.
Like we all think about it. Anytime you start something new, you always want to know the how. Like, how do I do this? Or how, like, tie it back to like a class. Like, how do I do my accounting? Like, how do I do government accounting in my example? But never really understanding the why behind it. And I found that if you don't know why you're doing something, there's no real reason to teach someone the how and the what, because they're not going to be motivated when life gets tough. It's just that's just kind of like something he talks about that in the book, but that's just something that I've learned personally is like when knew the why behind doing something, I was the most motivated. I was willing to find solutions and figure out the how and the what, but it wasn't until I knew that. Another book too I'd recommend goes along with kind of the dreaming big, but it's The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz, which is probably one of my favorite books as well. It's up there with Start With Why, but that one just really hits on the mindset of like we limit ourselves personally, but that book just like you just really think it says in the title Magic of Thinking Big, but it really pushes you to dream and to really think and like take some of those limited beliefs you have and like throws them out the door. So those would be two books I'd highly recommend people getting their hands on to read to develop their mindset. And I mean, one thing too with reading is be a learner. I like to call it like just learn, be a learner each day. My hashtag on LinkedIn is actually learn and implement, because I feel like learning should never stop once your formal education stops, because there's so much to learn in society. And maybe these two books I recommended might not trigger your mindset, but there's tons of books out there that can. And I strongly recommend anyone to go out and like seek out those books that interest them and really challenge your mindset to grow.
Definitely. I think that's some great points. And I think what I've kind of learned and what you kind of touched on was if you're not going to try something and fail, then what's the point of doing it? Because you technically didn't learn something. You didn't try to grow yourself. You didn't try to develop over a course of a couple weeks or months or however long that task took. So I thought that was a really good point, and I just wanted to emphasize on that. But Brandon, do you have anything else you kind of want to talk about today or share with us?
Yeah, I guess to wrap up the one point, and kind of was touching on it there, but is really never stop learning. I'll re-emphasize it because I just think a lot of people, and I know I had this mindset when I was in high school. I was like, once I get out of college, like I'm never going to read a book again. That was my mindset. I came from a small town in near Kimberly. It was Kimberly, Wisconsin, so near Appleton, and it was sports, and I excelled in academics, but I always hated reading textbooks. So I was like, once I get out of college, I'm never going to read a textbook. I'm never going to read again. But that shifted in college once I started reading like personal development books. But with how fast technology is changing our world today, you need to develop a growth mindset. And one of those ways that you can do that is through reading and really branding yourself as a learner. It's something that'll help you stick out in the corporate world because changing faster than what you'd ever expect. Stuff I learned my freshman year in college is obsolete. And I'm only that's 5 years. So that's crazy what happened with technology. But if you can learn and grow and adapt, that's really going to be a solid foundation for you to succeed in whatever you do in life.
Definitely. I love that saying that you said. So I kind of want to hear you say it one more time just for the audience. It was your learning one.
Oh, the hashtag learn and implement?
Yep. Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah,
I think everyone should want to do that. And mine that I always try to do is stop thinking, start doing. So Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Brandon, it was great to have you today. And we look forward to seeing your posts on LinkedIn or seeing how you're doing over the course of the next couple months. So thank you very much for coming on to the show. And it was a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me, Ethan.
So if you're ready to grow, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and let's build a mindset that empowers and transforms.